Hi everybody. This week we are going to talk about imagery, the poem's heart and lungs, the thing that makes the blood circulate through the poem, the thing that gives the poem oxygen, that's imagery. And then we are also going to talk about mindfulness. So let's get started. Here are some definitions of imagery in poetry from the Poetry Archive. So it could be anything related to the five senses. So you can go through your senses. If you feel like you have a sixth sense, by all means, feel free to use it. And sometimes the senses get mixed together, which is called synesthesia, and we will learn about that later this semester. So anything related to the five senses can be an image in the poem. So we don't have to stick with just visual things. We can move to other senses. For example, non-visual imagery could be the taste of air, of wind on fields. It could be ocean sighs, which is, you can hear that one. So there's different ways we can use senses in the poems to bring them to life more. In terms of writing poetry and imagery and why it's important, a poet could simply say, "I see a tree." But if we use images and if we use techniques like simile, metaphor, personification, when we're using these images, you can create so much more emotion and detail and vividness. And this is really how you get those aha moments in your poems. Especially if you are a new poet learning to write poetry, or you're someone who wants to take your work to the next level, you want to step it up, you want to really look at images. They are the heartbeats. Those are the things that people cling to and remember when they're done reading your poem. Here are some examples. This is a simile. Like a diseased lung, the city is shutting down. So you can imagine that. You can see the city shutting down. This is from a book of poems by Crystal Williams called Detroit as Barn. And she's from Detroit, and she wrote this poem about Detroit kind of falling to pieces. And she compared it to a diseased lung. This one by Michael Hoover, Rain Fractures Our View. You can picture that. And it's not just like rain, was in the sky in front of us. It fractured. It created this brokenness, this glass-like effect. And from Kamal Braithwaite's poem, The Skulls Had Become Hills. We can picture that too, right? This landscape of skulls. And that creates this sort of emotional, eerie response, right? In terms of making imagery effective, there are some things we can think about. So Ezra Pound, he wrote a very common definition of image. An image is that which presents an intellectual and emotional complex in an instant of time. So let's break this down a little bit. So it's this intellectual component to it. It's something that you're thinking through, and it has this sort of meaning to it. It also has this emotion behind it. So it's the two kind of mixed together, and it's this instant of time. The world is always changing and shifting and moving, and sometimes the image that we see is just this glint of light, or just this way something moves in the wind, can give us this image and this emotion and this thought, this intellectual depth. So it can be fleeting images, and good images are ones that no one else has ever said before, right? They're things that you've seen with your eye that maybe others have not, or you've said it in a way that others have not. I think the other thing about images that makes them wonderful is that no one else has said this image before, but they've felt it before. And it's almost like, I know that. Why didn't I write that? Because I have felt that, or I have seen that, or I understand that. The second quotation we have here from Larry Levis is the image draws on and comes out of the world of the senses. And therefore, it starts in a world that passes every moment, right? So we were just talking about this, the fleetingness. Could it be then that every image, as image, has this quality of poignancy and vulnerability, since it occurs and occurs so wholeheartedly in time? I think that's really interesting to think about how important images are and how they are vulnerable as well when we write them. And lastly, Tony Hoagland's elegant words, the gut level of the poem, the thing that hits you there in the gut, it comes out of the gut. Um, it's the instinct level of what you're writing and the ideas. All right, so when you're creating images, here are some tips. So first, show versus tell. Probably teachers have told you that before. You always want to err on the side of describing something to someone versus telling them straight out about it. This is not an academic essay, right? We're not trying to be necessarily linear here. Move into nonlinear, experiment, go off a little bit. I know some of you may not be poets as your first genre. You might write fiction or creative nonfiction or screenplays, and a lot of times you're focusing more on prose that's more linear. So go off the script a little bit. Be concrete versus abstract. So if I say the word love to you, that's an abstract word. If I show you a hug, that's a concrete image. Or if I show you tears on someone's face as another person walks away, that could be an image of love. But I'm not just saying the abstract word love. And connect with all your senses. Really push yourself to see where your best imagery lies. Like for some people, like the sense of smell is really connected to memory. So you might write a lot from that sense. So try to see if you can figure out other ways to include other senses. Here's a little exercise you can try. What experience could you connect to this image on the screen? So it's an image of a woman surrounded by birds flying up into the air. So here's my example. You closed the door and my world filled with birds. I could go a lot of directions with that, what that means, but it's just an idea of an image. We can take this picture of something and connect it to something else. Okay, so give that a try. The second thing I want to talk to you about this week is being mindful. Mindfulness is really important to being a poet because you need to be present in the moment to experience the world and get your inspiration for your works. I also find that it's just helpful for me in life in general, and it helps me lead a more poetic life because I'm paying attention. So in terms of what is mindfulness, mindfulness is maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of thoughts, feelings, sensations in the body, the things around you. So in the moment, you are paying attention to what is in that moment in terms of what's inside of you as well as what's outside of you. The second part of mindfulness is that it includes acceptance, that we're not judging our thoughts or our feelings or what's going on around us as it comes up, but that we're accepting it. And for instance, it says without believing that there's a right or wrong way to think or feel in a given moment. So if you have a thought and you're like, why am I thinking about that? I shouldn't be thinking about that. That's judgment of the thought. Instead of saying like, I'm having this thought, I'm going to sit with this thought and try to understand where it's coming from. Or I'm going to sit with this thought and help it to dissipate, like something like that. That doesn't mean that you see something that's happening around you and you just ignore it when you could step in or something like that. It's more this sort of stopping the judgment that we make on things so often. For instance, let's say you're out in the rain, you're outside and it starts to pour down raining. A lot of our instinct is like to get angry about that or frustrated about that. I encourage you, if that ever happens to you, to embrace it and walk in the rain and try to enjoy it, especially maybe not in like February or November, but in the summertime, if it starts to rain, just like if you don't have anywhere to be, let yourself get rained on and see what that feels like, and then go home and write a poem. Another part of mindfulness is being in the present moment versus keeping all your thoughts in the future or the past. So these are when we're in the future, we're not in the present. When we're in the past, we're not in the present, and our mind is in another place. It might be good to think about where your thoughts lie. Do you mostly think about the future, the past, or the present? And how can you work on being present in the now? Okay, that's mindfulness. So how do these things work together? So Muriel Rukeyser says, this moment is real. This moment is what we have. This moment in which we face each other. And if a poem is any good at all, it invites you to bring your whole life to that moment of the poem. And we are good poets in as much as we bring that invitation to you, to our readers. And you are good readers in as much as you bring your whole life to the reading of the poem. So she talks a lot about bringing your whole self to the reading and the writing process. Being mindful, being present, bringing all of you and giving all of yourself to the reading or to the writing versus thinking about something else, thinking about the past, thinking about what you have to do next, bringing your whole self to that moment. This is a poem called The Guest House by Rumi. And if you want to pause, I'll let you read it. It's a great example of theories of mindfulness incorporated into a poem. I recommend trying to meditate if you have never tried it before, or if you tried it before and you stopped, maybe just 10 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day. It can really change your writing and your art and your life. I have some exercises here. One is practice writing mindfully. This is a prompt, so you can pause and write now, or you could do this later. It's just a free writing exercise where you don't judge things as they come up. You let them flow out of you. That way you're not blocking your inspiration. And sometimes you just need to write like that for a few lines before you actually even get to the poem you want to write. A lot of times my first few lines are sort of thrown out. They're just like, I needed to get started. Here's another mindfulness exercise and a writing exercise to go with it about noticing something in the room that's gone unnoticed or unappreciated by you and paying very close attention to it. So you can try this one as well. And then this is a reading as a mindful practice. So taking time to read mindfully, this takes you through some steps for how to go through that process. So you can try this as well. And the last thought is writing is the painting of the voice, going back to the images. So writing in terms of how it compares to other art forms. We take our words and we paint with them. And that's what imagery is all about. Okay, I have like 1 more minute left in this video before it's going to cut me off. So I would like to just do a brief meditation with you guys. So if you can just sit comfortably and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. Exhale out through the mouth. It's good if you let it out on the side like that. Sometimes that feels good. Try it again. Inhale. Exhale, make some noise. I can't hear you, so don't be embarrassed by your sigh. Embrace it. And just notice that you are breathing. Notice the noises in the room around you as you breathe in and out. And say thank you to yourself for this moment to breathe and rest. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.